Welcome to MotoGeo, and here's the review of the Harley Davidson Pan America. So, what have we got from Harley Davidson? A brand new adventure bike. Can you believe it? I know I can't. I first saw this motorcycle at the EICMA motorcycle show a couple of years ago. I was really excited by the concept back then, but here we are, it's reality. So, what's it like? I have to say, hand on heart, I absolutely love it. It's a great motorcycle. Tours well, goes through the twisties good, and it also can hit the dirt and you can have loads of fun. So for me, the gem is this big engine. This big V-twin engine, 1250cc, and it's a ton of fun to ride. Usually with most Harleys, they're just all grunt and they've just got loads of torque, loads of bottom end. This bike is totally different. It has got some bottom end, it is pretty torquey down there, but when you get to like 4,500, it just takes off and unleashes that 150 horsepower potential. I can really now say I can have a lot of fun and play around with the power of a Harley Davidson, which before, on a cruiser side, you were never really playing around with the power. You were just like using it in an efficient way. This bike now, super fun, great engine. To accompany that, it's also a great 6-speed gearbox. It's a little notchy, but not too bad. Much better than all the old Harleys and the old clunky gearboxes. So it's a fairly slick gearbox. When you get down into first gear though, it still has that typical Harley where, am I in first, am I in neutral? Just kind of has a little bit of play at the bottom of the first gear. But other than that, it's a great gearbox. A great feeling clutch as well. On all the Harleys that I've ridden, and the clutch has always been a bit of an on-off, or not something that you could slip very much, or it didn't have a lot of feel coming back through the fingers and through the bar. But now the clutch really is just moving into this whole kind of modern vibe that they've got here at Harley now, with modern components, a great feeling clutch, a modern gearbox, and now it all feels like a really different motorcycle. I can hardly believe it says Harley Davidson on the tank. So also from this big powerful engine, there is also quite a bit of heat that comes off it. When I was riding through California to get up to Oregon, it was a baking hot day. There was a lot of heat coming off the engine, and I really did kind of feel it. But on the freeway, it wasn't too bad because I could just, adjust my body position and keep myself fairly cool. When I got to Oregon, it was cooler weather. I actually never even noticed the engine in Oregon. And at one time when it was cold at the top of Crater Lake, I actually really enjoyed having the heat there. Sound that comes out of this bike as well. I enjoyed the sound that came out of this bike, but that's just with a stock muffler. You can really liven this up with one of their aftermarket mufflers, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of others on the market soon too. So you can really liven this engine up because it's got a lot of grunt, a lot of power, loads of character, and I know with a sweet sounding muffler on there, it's just going to waken it up even more. Big old seat here, so loads of comfort there. Same for the passenger. I've been running my cameraman on the back at times, so it's been comfortable for him. Also some big grab rails, so lots of comfort for rider and passenger. And then also here with these big upright handlebars, just such a relaxed riding position. And then in an instant, just jump on your pegs and you're right there in control on the dirt too. You've also got this big screen at the front. I found that for the most part was really useful, but high speeds on the freeway, the screen would bend down, and I felt then that it could have been more effective. So I'd like to see a bit more strength here in the screen. I had one case where it actually, while I was just maneuvering the bike, I did actually pop it off, but it was very easy to pop back in place. It seemed like that's the way it was made. Instead of it breaking, the screen would either pop out of its carrier there, and same for the front as well. The front cowl was really easy to get to and remove, and that's a joy in itself, just having a few bits on the bike so you can actually get to stuff. And I felt like this is a bike you can actually work on. Some of the bikes these days are just covered in plastic and you can't get to anything. It's got some good hand guards in terms of wind protection, or if you're just clipping by some brush, but they're not like bark busters. These just easily pop off So they're really great for still having hand protection and wind protection and that kind of thing, but they're not the kind of bark buster to really protect your hands. If you're wanting to do some off-road, I'd change those out. But other than that, super comfortable up here and all that creature comforts, heated hand grips and cruise control. I love cruise control. I took this bike for like a 2,000-mile trip all the way up to Oregon. If you've not seen the adventure video, go check it out. You'll see what we really did with this bike. We just took this bike everywhere. So I started off on the freeway, see how she'd cruise, use cruise control, that kind of stuff. Got up into Oregon, then never looked back. Twisties and off-road all the way. Bike handled things really well. Off-road is pretty capable. The stock tyres, I think they're called a Scorcher. They're like an on-road, off-road tyre. Here I have the Michelin Anarchy, which is more of an off-road tyre, bigger knobs, more bite on the dirt, that kind of thing. And the bike with the Anarchy tyres on the dirt is super, super capable. With the Scorcher tyres, you've just got to be a little bit more careful what terrain you take it in. I found out in sandy washers, it didn't like sandy washers. If it was muddy, you've got to be really careful. It's still a big adventure bike. I mean, at the end of the day, it still weighs quite a lot. So big adventure bikes, they're all very, very similar, and I felt like this just fitted into that category. It was equally as capable as a multistrada. Off-road, it was equally as capable, in my opinion, as something like the BMW GS even. Didn't have that same bottom end control really at really low speed, but once this was going, super fun in the dirt. And then you've also got your riding modes as well, so you can find the one that works for you. Everything all the way from sport mode, street mode, enduro mode, you've got a rain mode in there. And all that's doing really is just softening off the fuel map, so the throttle response is not quite as sharp. So as in sport mode, it's obviously it's more sharp, and then really dulled down in rain mode and then off-road. In Enduro mode also, you can put Enduro Plus in there, and that releases you to have no ABS on the rear brake as well, which is what I really enjoyed off-road, being able to kind of skid the bike and have full control. And now one thing I want to say is, during my travels, I had both panniers on and they were full. And that makes a huge difference to how a bike performs basically on-road and off-road. So during my entire trip in Oregon, both panniers full of gear, full of camera gear, full of camping gear and all my accessories. So full bags at the back, and it was still capable off-road. You can get a lot more aggressive with it off-road when you just take the panniers off and go play, as you will see on many other videos. But for me, true adventure riding is when you're being a true adventure rider and you've got all the stuff with you for multiple days in the saddle. You don't see many of these bikes just going taken out for a day, splashing around in some puddles. Most people who are going to be getting these bikes, in my opinion, are going to be coming with panniers, filling them up, and then going off for days, possibly weeks, even months at a time. That's where this bike fits in really nicely, because when I had both panniers full, the bike didn't change all that much. It really rode well on the freeway, it rode well through the twisties. When I came to the off-road, it was still very capable. So it is a true adventure bike. When the panniers are full, your tank's full, and you go off for a couple of weeks in the saddle, that's a true adventure bike. This bike can handle it. Big old gas tank, comfy seat, loads of power, joy to ride. So Brembo brakes, great stopping power, I have to say. Really enjoyed the front brake, good feel back through the lever and no problems whatsoever. And then rear brake, just as good, another Brembo, good feel back through my foot. I'm really happy with the brakes. Suspension, well, Harley have developed something all new, totally new to the market, and that is a rear suspension, electronic suspension, that lowers at low speed and when you come to a stop. So the way that it works is, it has a bit of an adjustment at the top, so when the spring is working, it gets pumped up, and you use it on the road as normal, and as you come to a slow, under 7 miles per hour, between about 7 and 5 miles per hour, it drops down to this spacer, which is dropping about 20 mil, I think. And that allows you to, the whole bike to just sit down as you're coming to a stop and coming to, let's say, some traffic lights or a stop sign. then you can put both feet on the floor. So most adventure bikes, they're very, very tall, and that also makes them very intimidating for many riders. There's a lot of weight, you're on your tiptoes, so that it's easy for you to fall over with a big adventure bike. So it's really nice now when you can come to low speeds, the suspension takes another step down, and at low speed, as you're about to touch your feet on the floor, the bike's already moved down for you, and it's much easier to put your feet on the floor. So I've had friends who have sat on the bike who are tall. I've had friends that sat on the bike even shorter than I am, and that really helps both riders, because the feeling of having your feet planted on the floor is only confidence inspiring, especially when you've got a big bike like this, especially with the weight, especially when you've got a passenger who's getting on and off. It's nice to have both feet planted on the floor. So that's a really nice touch from Harley. Other than that, they've got electronic suspension front and rear, and you can go through your modes and you can play around with your suspension as well. So amazing to see Harley moving in with the electronic suspension as well. The suspension handled both conditions, on-road and off-road, well. I could feel the changes when I was going through my modes. I'm pretty impressed with the way that the bike handled. If anything, the bike is a little bit, so going through the corners, let's just take the Ducati Multistrada for example. That's a really flickable bike that's more sporty than it is adventure when you're going through the twisties. A bike like this is certainly lazier steering than the Ducati, but no more or less so than something like the MotoGeo or even the BMW GS. So the bike still steers well, it's just not as agile as the Duke, but right up there with feeling just as good as most of the other adventure bikes. But it is a bit top heavy because of the engine's also top heavy compared to, for like example, the BMW. It has got a few kind of quirky points, so let's go through those. So what I found that was really quirky was how many buttons are on this motorcycle. There's absolutely loads of buttons, and for me it was actually more confusing than helpful. And at that same point, the ones that I did want to use and that I did use more than the others, also more on the top here rather than in front of myself, and then I couldn't see them, and I happened to quite a few times disable or enable the cruise control when I was trying to go for the heated hand grips, or vice versa. So I found that there was just really too many buttons and it was all a little bit confusing. So I'd like to see that simplified. So when you come to start the motorcycle, it actually cranks for 5 seconds. Whether it starts on the first crank, second crank, third crank. Feels a bit weird at first when you use that, but once you know that, it's not even a big deal. I've also heard of some people complaining that it's got a starter issue. It hasn't actually got a starter issue, it's just that the way that the mechanism works. So when it's at top dead center and you try and start it, it actually can't start it sometimes if it's at top dead center, so the starter will just drop out and then reconnect, and then when you hit it again, it's got a little bit more momentum before, and it manages to turn it over. I hope that kind of makes sense. So basically, if you happen to just stop the bike and then you start it and it's at top dead center, the starter motor just generally will slip out, because it's, I think, about 50 foot-pounds of torque to generate the top dead center momentum, and the starter drops out around about 30 foot-pounds of torque. So that's just so that that's also come from older models, so they're trying to address that, but I didn't even find it a problem. It's just that if you don't start the first kick or don't start on the first hit of the button, you just hit it on the second and it'll start straight up. So also there was a master reset that I had to do one time. I was playing around with all the controls and the suspension. I was going on-road and off-road, and then one time it went into limp mode. I had to do a master reset. That was just pulling the fuse out from under the headstock there. Really simple, fuse out, fuse back in, master reset, good to go. So that was also good to know. But overall, with the Pan America, what you've got here from Harley is a great adventure bike. I'm kind of a bit blown away by it because I just didn't expect it to be this good. They've moved into this market. And look at it, it's a motorcycle that's pretty damn capable. We've been trail riding, I've been doing some single track, I've just taken it into all kinds of campsites, I've been going all over the place with it, and really it fits right in there with most big adventure bikes. Harley, I'm really surprised, but I've got to say, they've done a really, really great job. Pan America, double thumbs up. Damn awesome to have a piece of American steel hitting the adventure market and doing it in such a great way. It's awesome. I love it. Harley Davidson, well done.